not give you a medication while you're in the sympathetic state. That doesn't help you. It doesn't change your central nervous system state. Because when we put the body in the parasympathetic state, the body can heal itself far better than any medications could ever do. And think about it. How many of you got scratched up, cut up, or scraped up when you were a kid? You went to your mother, and you cried. And she put that Carmichael on it. How many of you remember that one? Right? Oh my God, that stung like crazy. I remember that. And then she put a Band-Aid on it, and she said, leave it alone, don't touch it. And then you couldn't help yourself. 3 days later, you ripped off a Band-Aid. It was cured. Wasn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Wow. I mean, I had so many scrapes and cuts and everything else. If those didn't heal, I would look like a leper by now. I mean, it was crazy. It's amazing how our body heals. So our mission in lifestyle medicine is not to keep you in the sympathetic state and put icing on top of mud, thinking it's a cake underneath. That doesn't work. Our mission is to swing the pendulum from being predominantly sympathetic to becoming predominantly parasympathetic. And when we become predominantly parasympathetic, like all the other animals on the face of the planet, our body heals. It's thriving. And we do well. And all the healing comes naturally. And that's what we want to experience. And what we've shown in the research, this approach is actually far more effective than any medications could be. Because our approach in lifestyle medicine is to address you as a total human being. Your well-being is grounded in 4 fundamental energies: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Those are your 4 fundamental energies. And this is the wisdom of the ages. We've known this for a very long time. And so we want to make sure that we have balance in your well-being in all of those areas, not just one. So there are many things that help influence your central nervous system. The 5 major things that I've learned from ancient wisdom. I didn't make this up, okay? So these are 5 elements that absolutely affect your central nervous system. Everything affects your central nervous system, but these you have so much control over. Number 1 is the thoughts that you think. Somebody told me yesterday, I can't control my thoughts. And I said, I beg to differ. We all can control our thoughts with practice, with discipline. So the thoughts that we think absolutely affects us. If we have, as one of my favorite teachers, Zig Ziglar, said, if we have stinking thinking, that would put us in the sympathetic state. And one of my other teachers, Norman Vincent Peale, how many of you know that? A wonderful teacher, and he said, if we practice the power of positive thinking, that'll put us in the parasympathetic state. Secondly are the words that we speak, just like your thoughts. So if we have critical, cynical, skeptical words, if we're complaining or we're gossiping, we're in the sympathetic state. If we're not watching the news and we're watching good stuff and listening to good music and we're saying positive things and being around positive people, with that will make a difference. We'll be in the parasympathetic state. Third are the actions that we take, no kidding. It's about living a life of integrity. Dr. Stephen Covey said, the ability to make promises and keep them to oneself is fundamental to living an extraordinary life. No kidding. So being able to do that. Fourth is the company we keep. We used to say, you are the average of the 5 people you mostly associate with. It's now been expanded. We now know from Dr. Christakis' research out of Harvard that you are influenced by all the people in your immediate circle and all of their friends and all of the friends of their friends that you may not even know. Wow. It goes 3 layers deep. So it's profound how much of an influence there is in the company we keep. And then 5th is the food that we eat. Now, I didn't know this, but since everything affects your central nervous system, do you think food affects your central nervous system? Absolutely. So healthy food will actually put you in the parasympathetic state. Not so healthy food will put you in the sympathetic state. So next time you're at a party and you haven't been there before and the host is making the food, ask the host, will this food put me in the sympathetic state? Just saying. Now, but what the areas of lifestyle medicine that I cover, all of these: hydration, nutrition, physical activity, risky substance reduction, sleep, emotional well-being, and stress management, which is major, okay? Healthy relationships and happiness, all of it matters and more. But these are the 8 areas I focus on. And I cover all of these extensively. So now, let's go into some of the stats. Most recent statistics from the Centers for Disease Control as of 2022. So after COVID, what we see, so COVID came in and took 4th place, but Alzheimer's is right not far behind. So what we see, that this is the death rate from Alzheimer's. It overtook diabetes. It overtook diabetes and kidney disease. All right, so Alzheimer's is more prevalent. But here's the next thing that's even scarier to me, is the projection. Carol, you're talking about how you're seeing more and more of your friends, right? Well, here's the projection. Here's the data from 2000 to 2022. We have seen a 142% increase of Alzheimer's now. That's significant. The projections are not good. They're not good at all. Here's the geographical map. And when you look at this, you're going to say, thank God I live in Northern California. But what we see is the highest concentrations in the darker orange areas, the south, the deep south, and the east coast, and Texas, and New Mexico area, that has the highest, and all of the Midwest. Okay, so a lot. There's a lot of Alzheimer's. I see a lot of it.
Why?
But, well, we're going to connect the dots for you tonight. We're going to connect it. Now, the definition of dementia is this. It's an umbrella term describing a set of symptoms causing a person to have changes in brain function that interfere with the ability to function and do everyday activities. That's the overall definition of dementia. Now, out of that, Alzheimer's accounts for about 50 to 75%. Vascular dementia accounts for about 20 to 30%. Lewy body dementia accounts for about 10 to 25%. And frontotemporal dementia accounts for about 10 to 15%. Now, you can obviously see that the numbers add up to more than 100%. And that's because there's overlap. Because some people have 2 or more of these types of dementia. It's not uncommon for that to occur. This is one of the diagrams talking about mixed dementia. So Alzheimer's is sometimes seen with vascular dementia, the most common form of mixed dementia. So we see that over here. So Alzheimer's and vascular is a combination. It can also be seen with Lewy bodies. So that's what we see sometimes as well. In some cases, a person may have brain changes linked to all 3 conditions: Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, and dementia with Lewy bodies. They get it all. So everybody's different in terms of how it shows up. The bottom line is that their brain is affected. Their brain health is impaired. Now, what we show is that more than 5 million Americans right now are living with Alzheimer's. By 2050, okay, in another 25 years, we're projecting that number could be as high as 16 million, more than triple. More than triple. Every 66 seconds, someone in the United States develops the disease. So it's happening very quickly. This one shocks me, is that 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dementia right now. That's the current statistic. That's rather grim. So if you're over the age of 65, that's a little scary. Look to one side, look to the other, 1 of these 3 is going down. That's not good. So the Alzheimer's disease by the numbers, some of the numbers on this. So 1 in 10 is the number of people over 65 right now that have Alzheimer's. 6 is the Alzheimer's disease, is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. 5.8 million number of Americans who live with Alzheimer's currently. 20 is the number of years that you could have the disease before symptoms actually show up.
Wow.
2/3 is the number of Alzheimer's patients who are women. It's predominantly female. So we see that a lot. Yeah, absolutely the case. Now, a lot of people want the quick fix for everything in this culture that we live in. Everybody wants the quick fix. They want a drug. Fix it now, fix it now. You go to the doctor, you want the doctor to give you a pill. So just so you know that over 400 clinical trials have occurred and 100% of all the drugs have failed. We have some new things that have been helping a little, not much. Not much, not nearly to the degree of what lifestyle changes can do. Now, just to give you a little map of the brain so you understand a little bit about the different portions of the brain. So, the temporal lobe, which is right here about your ear, it's right over here, right over your ear. The temporal lobe is where your memory is centered. And this is one of the areas that gets affected first. One of the most important areas of the brain that gets negatively impaired. Another area that gets impaired is the frontal temporal lobe, which is where intelligence, judgment, and behavior, that gets impaired. Another area that gets impaired also is the language area. So that's this parietal lobe of the brain. So this is the front, by the way, so this is me looking this way. And then in the latter stages, then even the occipital lobe, which is the back part, which affects your vision, that can also become impaired. There's different stages of how Alzheimer's progresses. And so it can lead to this pathology change over time, slow changes. And you may not see it, it's not overt, it's hidden inside your skull. So again, showing you the picture, this is normal brain tissue. And you can see this brain tissue is all the way up to the edge of the cranium, so you can imagine it's inside. So it's basically pressed all the way out. And you see how shriveled it is here. It's very shriveled, and you have these caverns of tissue that are basically moth-eaten, if you will. They're gone. They're gone. So a lot of the tissue is gone. The nerves are gone. We can do PET scans and actually show some interesting findings on this. We now have the technology to show the difference in how active your brain is. In a normal brain, we see a lot of activity. That red and yellow is really good. So here it's less. We start to see mild cognitive impairment, and then here we see this large hole and a lot less of the red and yellow, a lot less. So this is Alzheimer's disease. So we can actually see this. Now, in the stages of Alzheimer's, stage 1, Alzheimer's could actually be happening and there's no impairment whatsoever, but it can still be happening. I'm going to show you the physiology in a few minutes. Stage 2, there's a very mild cognitive decline, almost unnoticeable. Stage 3 is mild, what we call early stage Alzheimer's. This we can test for, and we can actually pick this up, so we can actually test for people and diagnose this. And stage 4 is the next level, which is mild Alzheimer's. Stage 5 is moderate Alzheimer's. Stage 6 is moderately severe Alzheimer's. And then stage 7 is severe Alzheimer's. The whole process of this degradation of the brain usually takes about 8 to 12 years, usually. So from beginning to end. However, it can take even longer. We now show that some people are actually showing signs of brain decay or even the clogging of their arteries as early as their 20s. And yet they won't get diagnosed until their 70s. So it can take a long period of time. So these are some of those things. That's just a graph showing the decline in cognitive abilities over a span of time of 8 to 12 years. But it can be even longer than that. Here's what happens inside the brain during those stages. So when we get to mild cognitive impairment, the disease usually begins in the medial temporal lobe, which affects your memory. And so we start to see short-term memory loss. That's earlier stage, so mild cognitive impairment. When it gets to mild Alzheimer's, the symptoms include reading problems, poor object recognition, and poor direction sense. Those are the typical signs. When we get to moderate Alzheimer's, which usually happens within a couple of years, symptoms include poor judgment, impulsivity, and short attention. And then to severe Alzheimer's, all of that is included, and then additionally, we start to see visual problems as well. It's the occipital lobe. So there's a lot of different things that can show up along the way. Everybody's a little different, but that's a typical scenario. Now, we actually are starting to show what's very exciting is that we're actually starting to develop blood tests to help you to determine whether you're at risk. So we're starting to actually see about more of these blood tests to help you detect whether or not you're at risk for Alzheimer's. For some people, this is a good thing to do. So just to let you know about that. Now, there's been a lot of speculation for a long period of time about different causes, what causes Alzheimer's. A lot of things that have been out in the literature, magazine articles, and news programs. So a lot of different things. One is that what causes Alzheimer's, the genes for beta amyloid protein. So is that a cause or is that a symptom? Well, it turns out that's a symptom. It's one of the things that we see more, but the genes get turned on because of your lifestyle. Another is the genes for apolipoprotein E and E4. So those things, again, genes don't necessarily cause the disease, but if your lifestyle is there, it's going to turn the genes on most of the time. Now, vascular dementia and infarct, that will put you at greater risk, but it's not necessarily the cause. Strokes caused by dietary fat, absolutely a risk factor, but not necessarily the cause of Alzheimer's, but it puts you at higher risk. Another thing that can be is considered a cause is dementia with Lewy bodies. Again, it's another form of dementia, but not necessarily the cause of Alzheimer's. And then finally, frontotemporal dementia. Again, that can be a corresponding part of the Alzheimer's picture, but not necessarily a cause. So all of these have been proposed as causes. What Drs. Dean and Ayesha Sherzai showed is that when they studied this, there's over 7,000 autopsies that we've looked at to be able to help us understand this a little bit more. There are 4 pathways that are going on in the process of Alzheimer's. So one is what we call glucose dysregulation. This means your nerves and your nerve cells and your brain tissue doesn't have the capacity to regulate the use of glucose. Now, here's why this is important. How many of you know somebody with diabetes? Okay, and how many of you have them, they're measuring the blood glucose? Yeah, they're measuring the blood glucose. So we have to have a certain amount of glucose. Why do we need to have a certain amount of glucose in the blood? To feed the brain. So we need 80 to 100 milligrams per deciliter of glucose in our blood supply because that's what feeds the brain. Your brain uses 25% of your energy. So it's got to have enough fuel. So our brain runs on glucose. The rest of the body runs on what we call glycogen. So it's a complex carbohydrate that we manufacture. So your brain runs on glucose, and we need 80 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. Now, my son asked me one day, "Hey, Dad, how much sugar does that turn out to be?" I said, "Let's do the math." She's a math guru. So we did the math and calculated what 80 to 100 milligrams per deciliter turns out to be in an average person with how many liters of blood? Victoria, 5 liters of blood. 5 liters of blood. So our human body is going to have an average of 5 liters of blood. So we did the math, and that turns out to be about 1 teaspoon of sugar. Oh, wow. For your entire body. That's enough to feed your brain. Diluted in 5 liters of blood is enough to keep your brain going. And you got to have that. So 1 teaspoon. So when you add sugar to your tea or your coffee or any other thing, you add 1 teaspoon, you now doubled the amount of sugar in your blood. You cause chaos in your bloodstream. We're going to talk about sugar later. Second pathway is lipid dysregulation. That means the ability to handle fats. So the brain is definitely a lot of fat in the brain, but it doesn't mean you need to eat it. No, but we need to be able to handle fat, and we need to be able to manage it well. And if we can't handle fats and process the fats well, that becomes problematic, especially when we have too much fat in the diet. We're going to talk about that. Next pathway is oxidation. So one of the things that happens in Alzheimer's, what we see is that when we start to have decay, anything starts to decay. You put water on a cast iron skillet and leave it there, what happens to the skillet? It starts to rust. Okay, rust is oxidation of the iron. It's one of the decay features of iron. So when you decay iron, it becomes rust. So the same thing happens inside the brain. So when we start to have nerve cells not functioning properly, we start to basically have brain rust, and that's called oxidation. Another pathway is inflammation. And if we stay in the sympathetic state for too much, too long, too often, we will trigger extra inflammation everywhere in the body, especially the brain. We'll do it there because remember, our brain is using 25% of our energy. So those are the four major pathways that are seen consistently in the breakdown process to lead to Alzheimer's. Now, major risk factors. I'm going to give you the major risk factors. Number one is having an elevated cholesterol. So if you've got an elevated cholesterol above 150 total cholesterol, that leads to more oxidation and plaque formation and a 300% increased risk of developing Alzheimer's. Okay, so that's a major risk factor. So, and one of the things that we see on the autopsies is oxidized cholesterol plaques. Elevated blood pressure. If you have elevated blood pressure that's persistent over a long period of time, and especially if it's over 140, over 90, that's going to increase your blood viscosity and arterial stiffness, and therefore a 250% increase in risk. If you have diabetes, that's going to increase your risk, because it accelerates the shrinking of the brain and increases your Alzheimer's risk by 2 to 3 times. We now call Alzheimer's very often diabetes type 3, because it's the same process. If you sleep consistently less than 7 hours per night, the amyloid cleansing that happens during deep sleep is impaired. And as a result, that increases your risk tremendously as well. That's a major risk factor. Additional risk factors: poor diet, high amount of sugar, high saturated fats, being obese, alcohol use, smoking, sedentary lifestyle, head trauma, small vessel disease, and stress. Stress should be at the top, but it's definitely there. Now, brain scans, I mentioned this earlier, that brain scans have revealed that even air pollution is a significant risk factor for developing Alzheimer's and related dementias. That's clear. Here we have pretty good air here in Sacramento, so we're in pretty good shape. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. 2 miles downwind of 3 chemical plants, including Dow Chemical. Yeah, so it was a good place to get away from. Now, new research also shows that obesity can cause brain damage as early as adolescence. That's a scary thought, because we have more adolescents' obesity than ever before. And we need to be aware of this. We've looked at the brains of over 7,000 people and injected their brains to look at the blood flow. So we've been able to actually do this, look at the x-rays of the blood supply, the blood flow, and what we've been able to do also dissect them. And here's what we show on doing cross-sections of their blood vessels. On the top section are all healthy brain arteries showing minimal blockage. But here what we see is, this is what Dr. Alzheimer's first discovered. He was a pathologist. So he discovered that so many of the arteries inside of the brain were filled with all of this oxidized cholesterol. This was really clogged up. So similar to a heart attack and stroke, we can have clogging of the arteries occur with oxidized cholesterol. So over 7,000 autopsies showed, 77% showed gross atherosclerosis rather than 47% in healthy brains. First stages in the 20s, 50% by the age of 50. 50% occlusion or 50% atherosclerosis by that age. We now understand that neurodegenerative brain changes can begin by middle age, and so does cognitive decline. We can start losing brain function as early as in our 40s, which is a scary thought. I've seen people get diagnosed as early as 55. Most are not diagnosed until 70s. So here's part of the physiology, what's happening. I'm just going to make this brief here. So if we look in the physiology, we have this amazing blood supply coming up from the carotid artery and then into the blood. We have all these articles and all these spaces called ventricles, which is where the cerebral spinal fluid collects to go into the entire spinal cord as well. So we have all of these specialized cells that help keep the structure of brain tissue healthy. They're called astrocytes. So astrocytes are very important cells. They make sure everything stays in place and it keeps order. A simple way of thinking of it. And then we have arteries going everywhere to feed every bit of tissue in the brain. Now, here's what happens. This system is so delicate and so precise that these astrocytes, this is what makes up the square array, makes up what we call the blood-brain barrier. How many of you have heard of that term before? Yeah. So the blood-brain barrier, this is it right here. Okay, the blood-brain barrier, these cells create that. And then these are specialized astrocytes, and they keep things in order. And then you have neurons, which are the nerve cells that have all the information and send signals everywhere. And then you have microglia, and they're in a resting state, so they're ready in case there is any debris or waste that needs to be cleaned up. So they're the vacuum cleaners. So they go around vacuuming things up. And so every now and then you have a little bit of protein waste. That's these little red globs here. And so these microglia will collect them and then send them over here to the vein and to also the cerebral spinal fluid to be excised and to get rid of. They'll take care of it. So it goes to the vein and it gets pushed away. So it's a constant cleaning system. It's always being cleaned. And this cleaning system happens most of the time when we sleep, especially the second half of our sleep. It's real important to get enough time being able to do that. A lot of it happens in the first part, but the second half is also important. So that's why we need 7 hours. Now, when we all these lifestyle risk factors, if they're happening, here's what happens. That nice picture starts to look like this. The blood-brain barrier starts to show more waste products interfering with it. We start to have more of these globs of protein waste, and they actually collect so much that they stick together, and we call them amyloid beta plaques. And what happens, that interferes with brain function, and eventually nerves start to degenerate, and they start to die. Because that waste is not getting cleared out. It's not getting cleaned out. So it's imagine being in your house, and you put all the trash from your kitchen in your living room, and not in bags. And eventually what would happen?
Smelly.
It would be really smelly, and it would be nasty, and it would affect your health, wouldn't it? So that's what happens in Alzheimer's. It's the same thing. All right, you're not able to clear out the trash. And so it backs up. The whole system backs up. So a simple little graphic here is that lymphatic function of clearing out all the trash is affected by your aging, your sleep quality, your cardiovascular disorders, depression, your circadian disalignment, obesity, sleep apnea, substance abuse, sedentary lifestyle. All of these things decrease your lymphatic function, cleaning out all the waste, which leads to more of the aggregates, more of the waste, which then decreases the lymphatic function even more, and it becomes this vicious cycle. That leads to neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration, and then dementia. So that's a simplistic diagram to help you understand. So this is why lifestyle medicine is so important. And that's why I'm going to introduce you to this wonderful book, The Alzheimer's Solution. I think if you got it right here, can I steal that for a second? Thank you. So this is a wonderful, wonderful book. There it is. The Alzheimer's Solutions by Drs. Dean and Aisha Shirzai. They are neurologists called the Brain Docs at the Loma Linda Medical Center. Seventh-day Adventists. They are fabulous, brilliant, and they've dedicated their life to being able to improve brain health. They are absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for that. And so they're really great. I've had the pleasure of meeting them a few times. They're really fantastic. And they have a fabulous family. They really do. In fact, this one now, I think she's only 18 and she just graduated from Harvard. They're brilliant. They're amazing. So really great people, phenomenal. They really want to make a difference in the world. Their book is really fantastic. I would highly recommend it. They run this program, the Health Minds Initiative study down in Loma Linda area. It's a community-based study, over 1,000 participants in 3 years running. And I think they finished the study. I haven't seen the write-up yet. But I love their acronym for approaching brain health and preventing Alzheimer's. It's NEURO. So that's what I'm going to go through with you right now. So N is for nutrition. E is for exercise. U is for unwind. R is for restorative sleep. And O is for optimized cognitive activity. So all five are important. So I'm just going to, there's a whole lot more I can go into, but today I'm just going to make this brief. So these are the five I'm going to go through. I'm just going to unpack this briefly with each of these. So let's start with nutrition. So here's what we show in their research, is that a plant-based diet is protective of brain deterioration. It's protective. Saturated fats are associated with increased insulin resistance, the same as the process of causing diabetes, and increased inflammation. Sugar, refined sugar, what we're talking about here, refined sugar, is associated with brain cell and connection damage. How many of you have seen children after they've had a sugar high? How many of you have seen that? Oh my God, that's risky business. Okay, now one of the diets that was tested was what was called the MIND diet at Rush University back in 2015. And they had 1,000 patients, and on a plant-based diet, they reduced the risk of Alzheimer's by 53%. Now, other diets we see even better, but I wanted to show you just on a predominantly plant-based diet. Cognitive function improved by 7.5 years. Not bad. How many of you would like to be 7.5 years mentally younger? Right? Does that sound good? That's a good proposition. So here's the formula. Every day, green leafy vegetables. Every day, cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, okay, cauliflower, kale, all right? Every day, other vegetables. There are over 1,900 different kinds of vegetables, so don't worry, we have plenty to choose from. Berries, blueberries, strawberries, all the berries, raspberries, all the berries, we see so much benefit from berries. Nuts and seeds, just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot, just a little bit of nuts and seeds, just this one little small handful is enough a day. Beans and lentils are absolutely one of your major starch foods that you want to have lots of in your diet. In the blue zones, we see that legumes, which is beans and lentils, are the #1 factor for longevity as far as a food item, single food item. Whole grains, not processed grains. Not processed grains, not flour. Okay, so whole grains. So millet, spelt, amaranth, quinoa, oats, rye, brown rice, okay, steel ketchup, all those things. So you want those great grains. I think in my previous seminar, I shared 21 different kinds of grains. And then herbs and spices are beneficial. So you want to have lots of herbs and spices in your food. Very, very good for you. Well, another book I'm going to recommend to supplement this information is from Dr. Neil Barnard's, because his father passed away from Alzheimer's. And so he wrote this book and dedicated it to him, and that's Power Foods for the Brain. Excellent book. Excellent, excellent book. I recommend this to everyone. It's an outstanding book, and it goes right along with everything that I just shared. So all of these things that threaten your brain, saturated fats, trans fats, excess iron, excess copper, aluminum, okay? And then you want brain protectors that have vitamin E and beans and chickpeas and blueberries and grapes and green leafy vegetables and sweet potatoes. And vitamin B12 is a good supplement to take for everybody. Everybody. It comes from bacteria, it doesn't come from anything else. And then you want exercise, intellectual stimulation, and sleep. We're going to talk about that. So you want to clean up your gut. Absolutely. Clean up your gut, and that's going to free your brain up. So you want to do that. The problem, children, okay, saturated fats. Saturated fats, absolutely a real problem. Dairy, meats, animal flesh of any kind, chicken, fish, coconut and palm oil, absolutely very high in saturated fats. So you want to eliminate those. So that's what you want to get rid of, especially trans fats. Trans fats are manufactured fats, so basically fats that are used by an industry. Snack foods like Doritos, which have a shelf life of how long? Forever. Okay. Pastries like Twinkies, how long do those last? Right? Fried foods. And if it says in the ingredients, partially hydrogenated oil, stay away from it. Stay away from it. Okay, so here's the cement the message home. If you fry your food, you're frying your brain. Okay, everybody got the message?
Yes.
All right, and if you eat the cheese, you become a cheesehead. Don't do that one either. All right, now when it comes to sugar, refined sugar lights up your hippocampus in your limbic brain, which is where you generate new brain cells. So the hippocampus is a very important feature of your limbic brain. That's where new brain cells get created. We show with the brain scans that when you take in refined sugar, it lights up your hippocampus stronger than cocaine.
Oh.
And by the way, I am not suggesting that I switch over to cocaine. Okay? Okay, so honey is a refined sugar, but it's refined by the bees, not by humans. There's a mixed findings with honey. Here's why. It has a lot of the refined sugar, but it also has some medicinal benefits as well. Now, if you sweeten with the honey every once in a while, not all the time, that could actually be beneficial for you in some studies. So that we show that. In fact, if you have a cold, one of the research studies, several research studies show that having a cold or an influenza virus, hot water with lemon, cinnamon, and honey is actually a very good help. It will help you. So it sometimes can be helpful, but you don't want to overdo it. So that's what you want to do. I'm grateful my mother actually bought Central Valley honey when I was growing up in Los Angeles, because when I went to medical school, everybody told me I was going to have hay fever. I never got it. Because I had the honey. Okay, now, refined sugar is a time bomb. Here's a problem. It stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, number one, and then it advances aging, no kidding. It affects the brain. And it only gets stored as fat. So we want to stay away from it. All right, so that's nutrition. That's the highlights on nutrition. Next letter is E for exercise. Now, here's what we show in the research. That a daily brisk walk, daily brisk walk, daily, okay, will decrease your risk by about 40%. 20 minutes minimum. 20 minutes minimum, preferably 30 minutes. Okay, so we want a daily brisk walk. Everybody with me on that one? You have the message, okay? Really, it makes a huge difference. I can't even begin to tell you. What happens when we show this with the blue zones research, that people who have greater leg strength a greater amount of what we call BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which allows your brain to actually create new brain cells and have greater what we call neuroplasticity, the ability to create new connections and helping you to learn new things. How many of you like learning new things every day? Yeah, so you want BDNF to come from your legs. You want strong legs, so get out there and walk. Really important. 3-fold increased synthesis in BDNF, okay, neuroplasticity by walking. So make sure you walk. Another activity that I recommend for all of us is my favorite activity for increasing brain function and decreasing the risk of dementia, and the research shows this. It was the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City showed that the percent reduction of risk of dementia is best in dancing regularly. Yes. Absolutely. Now, I'm not talking about just do this. That's not dancing, okay? I mean really dancing. So you want to really dance, especially partner dancing. That's the best. We actually have research showing that expert senior ballroom dancers scored significantly higher cognitively in their posture, their balance, their motor skills, and their tactile skills. And that's published research. It's extraordinary. Now, my godparents were extraordinary dancers. Mike and Mercedes Messina. They met at the USO while my godfather was serving in the Korean War. And he was a naval officer. So he met Mercedes and he fell madly in love because she was such a good dancer. And they couldn't have any children of their own. So I was their only godchild, and they spoiled me. It was wonderful. They were wonderful to me. And they danced every Friday and every Saturday night at the Officers Club in San Pedro. Took lessons the rest of the week. And every now and then, in Donicella's garage, they would put on a little dance demo. And they were amazing to watch. Amazing. They danced together to the very day that Mike died at the age of 86. Sharpest attack all the way to the very end. I'm going to introduce you to my godmother later. Okay? So she's coming up. So that's E for exercise. U is for unwind. Unwind. We need to be able to unwind. It's so important. Human beings have far more stress than any other animal on the face of the planet. So we need to be able to unwind. Eustress is the term used in psychology to describe the right amount of stress that allows you to function at an optimal level. Distress means that you have too much stress. In the last seminar, I talked about the stress performance curve. Some of you remember that. So when you go over the top, you end up into being in the area of distress. So we want to stay in eustress. Distress decreases your brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Meditation, awareness, and eliminating multitasking also help you to unwind more effectively. So very important. The most powerful coping skill is being able to reduce your stress in 2 minutes or less. And that is being able to practice the physiological sigh. The physiological sigh. Now, some of you, how many of you have been introduced to this by me already? So a few now. All right, so the rest of you, this is going to be great. Dr. Andrew Huberman, I'm going to send you the video if you want to practice this. Very simple. What we've known is that when we sleep, we do this particular breathing pattern where we inhale, and then we inhale more deeply, and then have a long exhale. Now, we do that every now and then. If you watch dogs or cats, when they're sleeping, they'll do this. Now, you do it too, but you don't know it because you do it when you're sleeping. What Dr. Andrew Huberman showed is that if we do this consciously, not only does it re-regulate our CO2 and oxygen levels, but it also allows us to re-regulate our stress hormones. It's amazing. And we produce more serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin in like that. It's so fast. So everybody do this with me. Just breathe. On the count of 3, inhale. Normal breathing. 1, 2, 3, inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And now, inhale. Pause. Inhale deeply. Long exhale. And then back to the breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And again, inhale. Pause. Inhale deeply. Long exhale. Doesn't it feel wonderful? It does. It's so fast and so effective. And it's very natural because we're designed to do this. We're designed to do this. Another practice is being able to practice meditation and or prayer. You relax the body, you focus your mind, and you quiet it, and you awaken your spirit. Absolutely. Very important practice. So very, very healthy to be able to do this. R, the letter R in the acronym is for restorative sleep. Restorative sleep. I love this picture. Now here's what we show in the research. Having sleep apnea increases your Alzheimer's risk by 70%. That's alarming. So it's a significant risk factor. So we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep in order to detox the brain, clear out all the beta amyloid plaques that form. So it's real important. And we see this with all forms of chronic disease. So here are the graphs for all-cause mortality, total cardiovascular disease, stroke, coronary heart disease. All of them, the sweet spot for the least amount of risk is 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So we want to have that. It's important for brain health as well. So all the chronic disease have the same graph. So the one hack I'm going to share with you right now, and that is having a consistent sleep schedule. It makes the biggest difference. So make sure you're very, very consistent in going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, every single day, even on the weekends. All right, it really helps make a difference. And power naps are okay, usually if they're about 30 minutes or less. All right, so that's the biggest hack there. O is for optimized cognition. Optimized cognition. So we want to be able to increase our ability to have our brain function and handle complexity. Complexity. What's that? I will. Don't worry, I got it covered. So we want to be able to do what's called occupational complexity. All right. So everything that we can do that has integration of our brain as much as possible. The more integration we can have, the better. So if you have occupational complexity, where you're doing a lot of things, not doing the same mundane things, that is better for our brain function. You see that in the research. So the higher complexity, the higher number of connections. For adults, as we get to be older, one of the things that we show is being able to play music is very helpful for the brain function. Really, to play an instrument is great. And by the way, I use that picture because I play the accordion. So, okay, so we want to be able to do that. And then partner dancing, like I shared with you before, partner dancing is absolutely one of the best things you can engage in. So absolutely, walk every day and salsa dance every night. All right, so we want to do that. And that'll help you with your habits. So that's the neuro acronym. Some additional information. Dr. Sandrine Souillet, she is a neuroscientist in Cambridge, and I'm going to send you her TED Talk. And what she showed in her research is very interesting, because she shows that if we have lifestyle habits that include the right food texture and food content and meal frequency and the right calorie intake, we can actually stimulate about 700 new brain cells being created in your hippocampus every single day. How many of you like to create new brain cells? Hey, not losing any, we want to create new brain cells. So it's amazing. So we want to do that. Now, some of the research that led to Dr. Ornish's study, here's the research that led to that, is Kuzma et al. And what we showed was this, that if there's about 60% of the cases with 60% risk with genetic risk, just the population, the genetic risk. If you have genetic risk plus unhealthy lifestyle, your risk of developing Alzheimer's and dementia goes up to 360%. Lifestyle is a major factor. That's what I want to show you here. So look, it's not just the genetics. But if you have a genetic risk, but with a healthy lifestyle, you actually decrease your risk. That's the importance of this slide. Okay? So the unhealthy lifestyle definitely increases your risk, and a healthy lifestyle decreases your risk from baseline. So we want to be able to do that. Now, impact of healthy lifestyle factors on the risk of Alzheimer's dementia. What we showed, there's 5 different factors here. Non-smoking, greater than 150 minutes per exercise per week, light to moderate alcohol, the NASH diet, and cognitive activities. Not totally strict, right? It's doable. It's doable for anybody. If people engaged in 0 to 1, they had 100% risk, dementia risk. 2 to 3 of these lifestyle risk factors, 37% lower risk. 4 to 5 of these lifestyle risk factors were addressed, 60% lower risk. So the more we engage in healthy lifestyle, the lower the risk of developing dementia. Everybody with me on that? Okay, so that's really good. Now, the exciting research. Dr. Dean Ornish released this and published this for the first time. A randomized, controlled clinical trial has demonstrated that an intensive lifestyle intervention without drugs may significantly improve cognition and function in many patients with mild cognitive impairment or early dementia due to Alzheimer's disease. This multi-site clinical study was published in June of 2024, just last year, in the leading peer-reviewed Alzheimer's translational research journal, Alzheimer's Research and Therapy. I'm going to send you the link to this in the follow-up email. So make sure I get your email address. Those of you who came in late, make sure I have your email address. I've got your name on the checklist, so I have to make sure I check you out. Do not leave until I have your information. Make sure. Now, Dr. Dean Ornish's Alzheimer's study found that intensive lifestyle intervention in just 4 areas. All he did was 4 things. 4 things, including a plant-based diet, moderate exercise, stress management, and support groups, can improve cognition and function in people with mild cognitive impairment or early-stage Alzheimer's disease. The study published in the Alzheimer's Research and Therapy found that 71% of the intervention group either saw improvement or were unchanged in their cognitive function after just 20 weeks. That's huge. FDA gets approved if they see a 5% improvement. 71% improvement or stable, according to the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation. So the key findings. Number 1, there was improvement in cognition and function. The study showed that a significant portion of the intervention group experienced improvements in cognitive skills and daily functioning, with some even reporting better performance in daily tasks. Dose response effect. The more that people did, the more they saw benefits. So the more they were active in these changes, the better they saw the results. Non-pharmacological approach, no drugs used in this at all. None whatsoever. And by the way, this is on, if you have Max, how many of you HBO Max? How many of you have Max? Anybody? So it's actually recorded. Dr. Sanjay Gupta interviewed Dr. Dean Ornish and a few others, and it's the whole story by Anderson Cooper. He did that. This is a special, and it was streaming on Max. and it's still there. And so it's the last Alzheimer's patient, and it shows some of the patients in the study. So they interviewed some of the patients. It was really wonderful. So I read the research study and actually been doing this. And I want to introduce you to Ted and Joan. So please stand up. So Ted was referred to me by his physician, which was a colleague of mine in medical school, Dr. Suzanne Tuber. And Dr. Tuber said, Ruben, I have a very dear patient who I've been working with for close to 30 years, I think it is. And he's been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment due to early stage Alzheimer's. And I really think that you could help him because I don't know how to handle all of this stuff. And, because she's an allergist. And
Yeah, my allergies.
she helped with allergies a lot. So it was really awesome, and it's been nearly a year. And I'll let Ted tell you the rest of the story. And Joan will share too.
We started about, I would say, 10 months ago. And I was declining, I mean, really bad. If I could do an analogy, if you take a bullseye and bring it out 10 and then do lights on each ring, the lights started getting dimmer and then they go out. It worked in and in and in. And all of a sudden it was there. And I can see why people with Alzheimer's get mad, because I felt like if you throw me in the water and I tried to survive, I could not keep a conversation. If you two were talking and I had a thought, if I waited until to be polite, it was gone. So I could no longer basically do anything as far as that. I started drawing back, talk about everyone, write notes. Yes, but if you don't remember to look at the notes, you're not going to do it. Look at my phone. And my wife became my caregiver, taking my drugs and stuff like that. But what I found is that the lights kept on going out until about the second ring. And all of a sudden I lost 52 pounds. I'm sleeping. I'm dealing with my PTSD. I'm balancing my past and my future so that I can stay in the present. And so it really, really helped because I was really working at trying to stay in the parasympathetic mode. And what I found is that after about 5 months, I knew I was declining, but I plateaued out. And all of a sudden, after, I would say, in the last 2 months, some of the lights in the rings are getting dimmer and coming back. They're getting brighter. Yeah, they're coming back on. And so I even remember I was in seminary. I remember an old joke. The first joke I put into my presentation, and it went something like this. Do you know what the cheapest and easiest college to go to? It's Bible college. You only buy one book. When you take the exam, really there's only 10 questions they can ask you. But you know what the best part is? When you cheat on your exams, they have to forgive you.
And his humor has come back.
Yeah.
That's been a major, major improvement because that was gone.
That when we're talking, you bring out a topic. Wow. Additional data comes back. Things are starting to come back. So, I'm so thankful. But really, this is my thing. The person who really knows how good I do or how bad I do, and really, even with my brain coming back, I still don't understand women. but this is her viewpoint of living with me, which has really been, I'm blessed to have.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to be the observer. You're watching somebody lose who they are, right? So when we met Ruben and we had an avenue to change it, and we grabbed onto it. Now, I have to admit, it is unfamiliar and it's not necessarily easy. Because you're taking a path that almost nobody takes. I mean, everybody still wants to go to restaurants and fast food, and they're tired, you want to grab something from the fridge or whatever. You don't want to get up and go for a walk. You don't want to, be scheduled about your sleep. And it can be a little intimidating and lonely because you really are doing something different. But if you're watching somebody disintegrate, you all of a sudden have that real, it gives you that extra oomph to do it. And all I can say is it is absolutely, we're lucky because he was diagnosed with this cognitive impairment, and Ruben and I both see it month after month actually improving. And I think that's really quite amazing because I'm not scared for him anymore because I know he's getting better. And now we just have to keep at it day by day.
And I know she went a long way because she gave up all her wine.
Please give him a round of applause. So this can work. It can work, but it takes work. It's not easy. Okay, and Joan, thank you for sharing. Both of you, Ted and Joan, thank you so much. So in summary, there are very, very few satisfactory treatments for Alzheimer's, really, other than lifestyle changes. Evidence suggests that with lifestyle changes, up to 90% of your risk can be reduced. That's what we've shown in the research. Evidence also suggests that with a healthy lifestyle, mild cognitive impairment can actually be stopped or reversed, and new brain cell growth can be optimized. So it takes a lot of practices, and lifestyle medicine, at any time anybody comes to work with me, they're looking for the one fix. There is no such thing. So there's a lot of practices, and here's just a short list of the practices. Try to really work on an oil-free diet, decrease your fats. Focus on plant-based nutrition, optimize that as much as you can. Definitely exercise, it's critical. Unwind your stress. If you have stress, you gotta address that. Restore to sleep, become much more consistent with your sleep. Optimize your cognition with many different things. And then, the other thing I always talk about is hydration, because your brain is 80% water. Guess what? You need it. You need lots of water, so it's really important. For all of this, it's not about perfection. It's about making lifestyle changes. Ted and Joan understood this because I said this so many times that it's all about progress. It's not about perfection. Just keep making progress. That's all you got to keep at it. It's the only thing I ask of anybody is just keep making progress. I want to introduce you to my godmother. So, Mike died when she was 86 as well. They were the same age. And 6 years later, in 2006, she was 92 years old. And at my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, I had the honor and privilege of dancing with my godmother for the first time. And I got to tell you, at 4'11", she was the best dancer out there. And it was remarkable. Mike was 5'3", white hair, flat top. And Mercedes was 4'11", and you can look at that. I mean, that's her at 92. She's beautiful. At 92, she was beautiful, and she lived to 102, 10 more years. Died sharp as a tack, plant-based diet, and a dancer. Okay, everybody got it. So, how many of you like to make the rest of your life the best of your life? Show of hands, show of hands. Okay, great. So imagine, just imagine, what would that look like for you? Would it be like Ted and Jim? Would it be like Mercedes, my godmother? Okay, would it be living a life of activity and vibrant energy? Would you be dancing on the beaches of all the favorite resorts on the face of the planet with your loved one? So the question is, where are you now? Are you there yet? Chances are you're not. So if you're going to get from where you are now to where you want to get to and have that kind of quality of life, which is possible for each and every one of you, what do you need? You need a plan, but do you have a plan that's actually proven to work? Most people do not. I suggest that lifestyle medicine does have a plan for you. And it's a wonderful plan. And I created this plan a long time ago. I've been practicing lifestyle medicine for 42 years now. It's been amazing. Since my first year of medical school, Victoria, my first year of medical school, we were first-year medical students running the free clinic downtown in Sacramento on 15th and C on Saturday mornings for all the indigent, the homeless, and the migrant farm workers. And one day, a migrant farm worker came into the clinic in his mid-50s, and he had gastrointestinal difficulties every morning. 20 minutes after he woke up, for the next 2 hours, he had gastrointestinal difficulties. And so I did a workup on him and presented it to my preceptor. And my preceptor said, "So what's your assessment?" And I said, "Lactose intolerance." And the preceptor looked at me quizzically and said, "What makes you think that?" I said, "Because I had the same exact symptoms 3 years ago. And Dr. Glover diagnosed my lactose intolerance by teaching me that there's no species of mammal on the face of the planet that routinely nurses a different species of mammal." Think about it. And so I cut out all the ice cream and all the dairy, and I was cured. And the preceptor said, "Well, that's interesting. So what's your plan?" And I said, "I'm going to educate him on mammalian species lactation, and then I'm going to have him cut out all the dairy for a whole week." And he said, "Sounds like a good plan. Have him come back next week, see how it works." The next week, this migrant farm worker came in, and he gave me this biggest hug. And he was sobbing because he was cured. No more problems, no more pain, no more discomfort, no more worry. How many of you like to live a life with no more pain, no more discomfort, no more worry ever again? Yeah, it was really remarkable. So I've been practicing this for 42 years. So there's a plan, and it's a very simple plan. It's not easy. It's a 4-step plan. Number one, we must begin from within. We need to address our mindset, our thinking, our attitude, our consciousness, and awareness. If we don't start here, nothing will work. Okay, we must start here. Secondly, we need a proven strategy, and that's what lifestyle medicine provides, an evidence-based approach. Number 3, we need to practice consistency so we can develop those habits, and habits produce results. So that's how it goes. And then number 4, we know from studying the Blue Zones, and we know from everywhere else, that support and accountability is necessary for us to sustain the changes that they last a lifetime. So it's really important. So all 4 are necessary. So I do lifestyle medicine consultations, just to let you know some of the work that I do. I do consultation for people to set them up and get them started. I do healthy lifestyle one-on-one coaching. I've been doing it with Ted and Joan for quite some time. I also have a lifestyle medicine immersion program. I'm very excited. I'm going to launch this after Labor Day. It's going to be so exciting. It's basically going through my entire book in 12 weeks. It's phenomenal to get people started on transforming their lives. I also did lifestyle and performance medicine in the workplace. One of my favorite things to do is transforming the lives of an entire company. An organization is fantastic. That's my contact information, just so you have it. But I'm going to leave you with this quote, that life is not a journey to the grave with the intention to arrive safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow."